Hello and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 10 September 2025, brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we'll be covering the 7 set of current affairs issues which are featured in today's newspaper. The handout of this very discussion is available in the comment section below for your future reference. Beginning with the analysis section, firstly we'll try and understand that why is this Gen Z generation protesting on the streets when it comes to Nepal, and what all implications it would be having for India-Nepal relationship. Moving on to the second topic, as recently the vice presidential elections have been concluded. So in this particular backdrop, we'll try and understand the various constitutional articles which are related to this particular post, and we'll also understand in greater detail that what is the role of vice president acting as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Moving on to the simplified section, herein we'll be covering the 5 set of current affairs issues in the most simple manner possible, and we'll also be doing the relevant value addition from prelims perspective. So stay tuned. So now, beginning with the first topic, which is dealing with the protest that we are witnessing in Nepal. This particular topic you can associate with GS paper 2, India and its neighborhood relations. So what is the background? Why is this Gen Z generation protesting on the streets when it comes to Nepal? So you need to understand what has happened previously. So few months ago, various Facebook pages, one named as Next Generation Nepal, was being used by this Gen Z generation to actually highlight the various systematic issues which were there in Nepal. That is the corruption, then the lack of accountability mechanisms through which they can hold the politicians accountable, then the increasing and aggravating social inequality and lack of job opportunities. So through the social media, the Gen Z generation, which is actually born between 1996 to 2012, they were expressing their dissent when it comes to the functioning of the government when it comes to Nepal. Okay, before we understand this particular issue, you need to tell me that the generation which is born after 2013, what do we call them as? Just a minute. Okay, we call them as Gen Alpha. So majority of you would be coming in this Gen Alpha. Okay. Now coming back to the issue again. So what happened in response? The Nepal government actually banned 26 social media platforms. And what reason the Nepal government actually gave? That these social media platforms, that is WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they failed to register with the authorities by a certain deadline. But we know what was the root cause. That the youth was frustrated, okay, because of the systematic issues which are prevailing in the Nepal government or in the Nepal society as well. So now this banning of the social media platform act as a triggering mechanism. Already the root cause was the corruption, increasing social inequalities, lack of job opportunities for the youth. But this banning of social media, platform act as a triggering mechanism, and that led to violent protests being witnessed currently on the streets of Nepal. Now, why this act as a triggering mechanism? Because for youth, the Gen Z generation, for them, social media platform was a way through which they can express their dissent, okay, when it comes to the working of the Nepal government. And that is the reason it acted as a triggering mechanism. Now, what is the present situation? The Prime Minister of Nepal, that is KP Sharma Oli, he has resigned. Whereas when you talk about the President, that is Ramchandra Podal, he is under the protection of army. He has accepted the resignation of Prime Minister. Now, is that so that it is for the first time we are witnessing political instability when it comes to Nepal? The answer is no. Okay, we have history, okay, of political instability when it comes to Nepal. This is not the first time that you are witnessing instability in Nepal. Now, till 1951, Nepal was actually ruled by the monarchs, okay, various dynasties including the Ranas. Monarchy basically means that you will be becoming a leader based on the heredity, okay. But then this system ended in 1951 and a parliamentary democracy was established in 1951. Then what happened? In 1961, the King Dharmendra actually banned the political parties and centralized all the powers in his own hand. And this centralized system was basically referred to be as Panchayat. Okay, not the Panchayat web series. The centralized, centralization of power in the hands of the king, that system was basically referred to be as panchayat, which came into effect from 1961. Then in 1990s, what happened? The political parties, they launched a campaign which was basically referred to be as the People's Movement, to basically restore this parliamentary democracy. Okay, so at that time, the King Birendra lifted the ban on the political parties, which was actually imposed by King Mahendra, and that ended this panchayat system, okay, wherein the king was having all the powers. Then later on, what happened? In 1996, we witnessed violent protest, okay, being carried out by the Maoists, because they wanted to make sure that ultimately we have a people's republic wherein everything is directed or decided by the people itself. And due to this, we witnessed a decade-long civil war in Nepal. Then in 2008, what happened? Finally, the monarchy was abolished and the Nepal became a federal democratic republic. What do we mean by federal? Federal basically means that the two level of the government, that is the union government and the state government, their powers, their area of operation, all this thing would be determined by the constitution of that particular country. It would not be the union government that would be deciding that what power should be given to the state government. Powers of the state government, powers of the union government, their area of jurisdiction, all that would be outlined in the constitution of that concerned country. Then what do we mean by democratic? Wherein the representatives are elected by the people. Okay? The leader is not being appointed on hereditary principles. Then republic basically means what? That the head of the state is an elected one. Maybe direct election or indirect election. But the head of the state position should not be given on the hereditary principle. Okay, so republic basically deals with the head of the state position. Democratic basically means the other representatives should be elected by the people itself. Okay, republic particularly deals with the head of the state position. Then at that time, the Maoist leader, that is Pushpa Kamal Dhalar Prachand, became the prime minister. Then in 2015, Nepal adopted a new constitution and Oli, which has recently resigned from the post of prime minister, at that time in 2015, he became the prime minister for the first time in October that year. And later on, he has to leave his post in 2016, again because of some political instability. Again, he became the PM in 2018, 21 and 2024. So from this, we can understand that it's not the first time that we are witnessing instability in Nepal. Nepal has a history of political instability. Now, how this current instability which we are witnessing in Nepal is going to have negative implications for India-Nepal relationship. For that, you need to understand that why Nepal is relevant from the point of view of India. Now, first thing that you need to understand is, because you can get a prelims question on this thing, that which all states share the land boundary when it comes to Nepal. So it is your Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal and Sikkim. So these are 5 states. Okay. Now coming back to the convergence between the two countries. So we have a strong historical tie with Nepal because of the cultural link due to Buddhism, because the Buddha's birthplace Lumbini is located in present day Nepal, whereas other places which are associated with the life of Buddha, that is Sarnath, Bodh Gaya, Kushinagar, they are situated in India. So we have strong cultural links because of Buddhism. Then we have Roti Beti ka Rishta with the Nepal. And in 1950, we had signed a treaty of peace and friendship, under which the both countries agreed that they would be giving reciprocal treatment to the other country citizen, okay, with respect to residence, property, businesses and movement. If you people are able to recall, we studied the exemptions with respect to the new Foreigners Act. In that case also, exemptions were given to the people who were Nepal citizens, okay. Then this Nepal has geostrategic significance when it comes to India. Nepal actually acts as a buffer state, okay, between India and China. And this current instability in Nepal could lead to influx of illegal immigration when it comes to the states that are sharing the boundary with Nepal. Okay. And this instability would also reduce the relevance of Nepal acting as a buffer state against any possible aggression when it comes to China. Then from trade and economy perspective also, Nepal is very crucial to India. Why? Because India is the largest trading partner when it comes to Nepal. So we have good bilateral trade relation, and India is the highest source of FDI when it comes to Nepal. Now you need to understand that how this current instability that we are witnessing in Nepal is going to negatively impact the Indian investors which have long-term stakes in the Nepalese economy. Why? Because FDI basically refers to long-term investment and it is different from FPI. Okay, and right now we are already suffering from the negative consequences of heightened tariff imposed by the Trump administration. This current instability that we are witnessing in Nepal is going to further reduce our export market. Okay, because Nepal is also a export market for India. Then the instability is also going to affect the connectivity projects that we have developed over a period of time. So we talked about laying an electric rail track which would be linking Kathmandu with Raxaul. Then we have good relation when it comes to energy domain also. So way back in 2019, this cross-border petroleum product pipeline, which was first when it comes to South Asian region, was inaugurated, which connected Motihari, which is there in the state of Bihar, with Amlekganj, which is there in Nepal. Okay, so this is a 69-kilometer pipeline which would be connecting the two regions, and this was a step to further deepen our ties with Nepal. And what advantage it would be for Nepal? It reduces the pump price for Nepalese by 2 rupees per litre. And how it was advantageous for India? This particular pipeline that we inaugurated way back in 2019, this created customers for the Indian Oil Corporation, which was a key player when it comes to establishing this particular pipeline. So you need to understand that this current instability would also be negatively impacting whatever connectivity projects or infrastructure projects that we have developed in the Nepal state. Then we have good defense cooperation also. So over a period of time, we are recruiting Nepali soldiers in the Gorkha regiment of Indian Army, and the two countries carry out Surya Kiran, which is an annual joint military exercise. Okay, alternatively, it is conducted one time in Nepal, one time in India. Then the two countries also coordinate on different multilateral forums like BIMSTEC, SAARC. Then they are also part of the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and Nepal Motor Vehicle Agreement, as well as both the countries are part of International Solar Alliance. Then when it comes to disaster management, India has always lent a helping hand whenever the Nepal has suffered from any kind of disaster. You take the example of 2015 when Nepal was hit by an earthquake. So Indian government started Operation Maitri and we provided humanitarian assistance to Nepalese people. Then during COVID-19 pandemic, also we provided the Covishield to Nepal under the Vaccine Maitri initiative. So we have good relation, historical ties with the state of Nepal. This current instability would be having negative implications when it comes to India-Nepal relationship. Now, having understood the negative implications that the current instability that we are witnessing in Nepal is going to have on India-Nepal relationship, let's just understand what are the challenges which are there when it comes to the two countries. First and foremost is the border disputes that we have between the two countries. And the dispute got aggravated way back in 2020 when the Nepal government actually came up with a new political map wherein they claimed 3 Indian territories, that is Limpiadura, Kalapani and Lipu Lake, and they claim that these territories are part of Nepal. Now, in order to understand this border dispute, we need to go back in the colonial times. Way back in 1860, the then colonial leaders, the British Indian and the King of Nepal, they signed Treaty of Sugoli. And based on this treaty, the British India and the King of Nepal, they agreed that Kali River would be acting as a boundary between India and Nepal. At that time, British India and Nepal. But then why is this border dispute then? When the two have agreed that Kali River would be the boundary between the two countries? The dispute is because the two countries have their own story when it comes to the origin of the Kali River. And based on their own version of story, the two countries, say that these three territories are a part of their particular country. Okay. Then another concern that we are witnessing is rising Chinese influence when it comes to Nepal. Now, right now we have understood that why Nepal is, geostrategically important for India, because it acts as a buffer state, okay, between China and India. But because of this increasing Chinese influence when it comes to Nepal, which can be very well, understood, because Nepal is a key partner when it comes to China's Belt and Road Initiative. And this is the reason India is concerned that currently that we have this perspective that Nepal is geostrategically important for India because it is acting as a buffer state between India and China. Because of the increasing Chinese influence, it would not be acting as a buffer state. Okay, and the Nepalese government has also raised concern with regard to the Agniveer scheme also, and because of their concerns, it has been highlighted that now the Gorkhas, which were traditionally being inducted into the Indian Army in the Gorkha regiment, they might be joining the Chinese People Liberation Army. Okay, what is this Agniveer scheme? Under this, the youth which is aged between roughly 17 to 21 years of age, they can be a part of the army, but for a period of 4 years. And after 4 years, only 25% of the Agniveers would be taken for permanent basis. Okay, whosoever retires after 4 years, they would not be getting any pension benefits. The 25% of them who would be taken on permanent basis, they would be the one who would be getting the pension benefits, which is available to army personals. Okay, so with respect to this scheme, the Nepalese government has raised concerns. Then widening trust gap between the two countries because of delay when it comes to project implementation in which India has invested, and there is a perception among the Nepalese people that India interferes in the domestic politics of Nepal. Okay. Then there are concerns with respect to the treaty of friendship that we have signed way back in 1950s. From 1990s only, Nepalese government has started raising this concern that this treaty is not in alignment with the Nepalese interest. Okay, it is like an imposition of India's interest on Nepal. Then there are security issues also. As we share a roti beti ka rishta with Nepal, so the border is highly porous and very low amount of military personnel deployed when it comes to India-Nepal border. And that is the reason the insurgent groups, when it comes to the northeast region, they, take benefit of this porous border and they use it for arms smuggling, for flow of counterfeit Indian rupee, etc. So this raises internal security challenges when it comes to India. Now, what needs to be done? First and foremost, we need to have sustained and open diplomatic discussions with the interim government, which would be formed over a period of time. And as the Ministry of External Affairs has clearly pointed out, that any solution to the current instability when it comes to Nepal should be based on a dialogue. Okay, and that is something that we should support in the upcoming future also. Then we should make use of track second diplomacy, basically involving NGOs, academics and civil society organization to further strengthen the people-to-people ties when it comes to India. Then we need to revisit the Friendship Treaty of 1950 and we need to align it in accordance with the Nepalese people interest. Okay, so that we can address this perception that India basically goes by its own interest and it is interested in imposing its own interest on the Nepalese people. Okay, so big brother syndrome that is there that we need to address. Then we need to explore and implement the joint hydropower projects, basically exploiting the hydropower potential of Nepal. Okay, and this would enable us to further strengthen our relationship with Nepal. Then we should adopt the policy of non-interference, especially when it comes to the internal politics. And recently the Ministry of External Affairs has gone by this particular policy because it has issued the advisory, whosoever Indian nationals are there in Nepal, that they need to follow whatever guidelines are being issued by the Nepalese government. And it has issued a travel ban So you're not allowed to travel to Nepal, and it has taken adequate measures, like we have increased the security deployment when it comes to India-Nepal border, so that we can effectively address the issue of influx of illegal immigration when it comes to India. Okay. And going further, to provide adequate support to the Indian nationals which are stuck in Nepal, we are providing the humanitarian assistance and continuous support from the Indian embassies which are situated in Nepal. These are the steps which the Indian government has taken in the recent time in the backdrop of the instability. Let's see how things unfold over a period of time. Now with this, we have come to end of this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you people. So based on our discussion, try and attempt this particular question. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, recently, the vice presidential election have been concluded, and C.P. Radhakrishnan has been elected as the 17th Vice President of India recently. This particular topic you can associate with GS paper 2, functioning of the Parliament. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is what all constitutional articles deal with this constitutional post of Vice President. So these are Article 63 to 71. And Article 63 clearly states that there shall be a Vice President of India. Now, what all qualification a person needs in order to contest the election for the post of Vice President? So these eligibility criteria has been clearly outlined under Article 66 of the Indian Constitution. 3 of them has been mentioned under Article 66 Clause 3. And what are those eligibility criteria or qualification? A person needs to be an Indian citizen. He should have completed 35 years of age, and that person should be qualified to be elected as a member of Rajya Sabha. Then another criteria has been mentioned under Article 66 Clause 4, that a person who holds an office of profit under union or state government or any other local authority or public authority, such a person would not be eligible to contest the election for Vice President. But there is an exception to this thing. If a person is holding the post of President, Vice President, or Governor of any state, or as a minister either of union or state government, such people would still be eligible to contest for the election of Vice President. Okay, they would not be disqualified on the ground that they are holding the office of profit. Okay, you need to keep note of this thing. Then Article 66 Clause 2 states that a person should not be a member of either House of the Parliament or the houses of the state legislature. And if that is so, then once that person enters and assumes the office of Vice President, that person would be deemed to have vacated his or her seat from that respective house. Now, let's draw a comparison between the election for the post of President and the post of Vice President. Now, when you talk about the electoral college, when it comes to the presidential election, we have elected members of Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, and we have elected members of the state legislative assemblies, and we have elected members of the union territory assemblies, okay, that is Delhi and Puducherry. But when you talk about the electoral college for the election of Vice President, we only have members of Parliament, okay, and here we have both elected as well as nominated members from both houses. And in Vice Presidential election, the MLAs do not have any role to play. Why is it so that MLAs, participate when it comes to the election of President? Because President is considered to be as head of the state, okay, he is there to, protect the interest of the states also. So that is the reason we have the involvement of the states when it comes to the election of President. Then when you talk about the value of vote, it is different, okay, for MLAs and MP. You can look into these particular formulas. When it comes to the presidential election, however, the value of vote for each MP is same when you talk about the vice presidential election. Then for nomination, for presidential election, you need 50 electors as proposers and 50 electors as seconders. However, the requirement is 20 electors for both proposers as well as seconders. And when it comes to the place of voting, it takes place at multiple locations because MLAs are also part of the electoral college. However, when you talk about the vice presidential election, the voting takes place in parliament only because only MPs are there. Now let's look into the other constitutional provisions related to this particular post, that is Article 67, which deals with the term of Vice President of India. So this article clearly states that from the date a person assumes this particular office of vice president, he or she would be enjoying a term of 5 years. However, such a person can resign by giving the resignation letter in writing to the president, or such a person can be removed when a removal motion is introduced by the Rajya Sabha. You need to understand that this is a special power given to Rajya Sabha. When it comes to removal motion for the vice president, it could only be introduced in the Rajya Sabha, not in the Lok Sabha. And when it comes to introduction of this motion can be introduced only after 14 days notice which has been given to the vice president. Okay, in this regard, that we are going to introduce this particular motion. And vice president would be considered to be removed only when such a motion is passed by effective majority when it comes to the Rajya Sabha. Can anybody tell me what do you understand by effective majority? Effective majority basically refers to 50% of the effective strength of the house. Now, what is this effective strength of the house? Effective strength of the house basically imply that what is the total strength currently minus the vacant seats. Alright, so currently the current strength of Rajya Sabha is 245 members, and if let's suppose 45 seats are vacant, so we are left with 200. Now 50% of this 200, that is more than 50% of this 200, that is 101 votes you will be needing for the removal of the vice president. Okay, I hope you would have understood that what is the difference between simple majority and effective majority. Simple majority simply states that majority of the members present and voting, but effective majority basically deals with that what is the effective strength of the house, and more than 50% of the effective strength of the house you need. And such a motion needs to be agreed to by the Rajya Sabha by simple majority only. Okay, so just make a note of this thing, that in Rajya Sabha you need effective majority, that is majority of all the then members of the council, whereas when you talk about Lok Sabha, such a motion needs to be passed by simple majority only. Okay, so vice president, notwithstanding the expiration of his term, continue to hold the office until his successor enters upon his office. Okay, so it's not like the vice president would be immediately leaving his position, okay, right after his or her term is ending. Until unless his successor is not assuming the charge of his office, vice president would continue to work. Okay, now what is this Article 65 dealing with? So Article 65 talks about when vice president act as president in case the post of president has become vacant. Why? Because the president might have died, or would have resigned, or would have been removed. Okay, in such case the vice president would be acting as president only for a maximum period of 6 months, within which the post of president needs to be filled. Okay, or till such vacancy is filled. And another situation wherein the vice president would be acting as president is when the current president is unable to discharge his functions, maybe because of some illness or absence. Okay, in this situation, the vice president would be acting as president until the date on which the president resume his duties. Okay, then you need to make note of another point which could be asked in the prelims, is that when the vice president is acting as president, he or she would be having all the powers and immunities which are available to president. But one more point you need to make note of is that vice president would be getting such emoluments, allowances and privileges as would be determined by the parliament by law. Okay, you can get a prelim statement like this, that when the vice president act as president, he or she would be getting these salaries and allowances, emoluments equal to what the President of India gets. You need to mark the statement incorrect because that is to be determined by the parliament by a law. In case such a law is absent, then things would be determined based on the second schedule. Now let's draw a comparison between the Indian vice president and the American vice president. Now when it comes to the American vice president, when the office of the president becomes vacant, then the American vice president becomes the president and he works as president for the remaining period of his predecessor. But that is not the case when it comes to India. We have right now discussed that according to Article 65, if the office of president has become vacant, then the vice president would be acting as president only till the time a new president gets elected. Okay, so he would be acting as president only for a temporary period, that is maximum 6 months, within which the election to the post of the president needs to be conducted. Then, can the vice president be assigned duties beyond what the constitution outlines? So, the answer is yes in case of America. Therein, it is up to the president. Okay, president can assign certain additional duties when it comes to the American vice president. But the same is not true when it comes to the Indian vice president. Then when you talk about the election process, so in America, the same electoral college would be electing the president as well as vice president. Okay, but right now we discussed that when it comes to India, the electoral college is different when it comes to president as well as vice president. Okay, in vice presidential election, MLAs do not participate, but they do participate when it comes to the election for the post of president. Now, what are his key functions when he acts as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha? So, according to Article 64, vice president shall be the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. So, he has procedural authority, basically maintaining the decorum. How he maintains the decorum? So, according to Rule 255 and 256 of the Procedure and Conduct of Business Rule of Rajya Sabha, if a MP is behaving in a disorderly manner or is disregarding the authority of the chair, then in that case, the chairman can name that particular person, and then the House would be introducing a suspension motion with respect to that particular MP. Okay, you need to understand that when it comes to the chairman of the Rajya Sabha, he does not have automatic power of suspension that we have in case of Speaker of Lok Sabha. Okay, in case of Rajya Sabha chairman, the chairman would be naming that particular person, and then the House would be considering the introduction of a suspension motion with respect to that particular MP, and that MP could be suspended for the remaining period of that particular session. Okay, so that's how he maintained the decorum. Then he would be the deciding authority that whether the House should carry on its functioning or not in case there is lack of quorum. Quorum basically means 1/10 of the total strength of the House. So, in case of Rajya Sabha, you need 25 members minimum, including the presiding officer, in order for the Rajya Sabha to carry out its meeting. And if there is lack of quorum, then in that case, the presiding officer can adjourn that particular meeting. Then he enjoys casting vote, that is voting in case of tie. Okay, under Article 100. Then he has the power to refer the bills to the parliamentary committees based on their subject matter expertise. He or she would be the final interpreter of the constitutional provisions, rules of procedure, conduct of business rules with respect to Rajya Sabha. Okay. Then he or she is the one who protects the privileges of the House. Okay, and he or she is the one who refers the matters related to breach of privilege to the privilege committee. Can anybody tell me what is the difference between breach of privilege and contempt of House? You understand what is privilege? Privilege is a kind of special rights and immunities which has been given to the members of the House, okay, Parliament, as well as the state legislatures also, as well as the members of parliamentary committees, so that they can effectively discharge their functions. Now, if any authority or an individual breaches any of this individual or collective privileges, then in that case would be considered to be as breach of privileges of the House. But there are cases wherein there would be contempt of the House, but it would not be considered to be as the breach of privilege of the House. If, let's suppose, House has passed an order and the concerned individual or that authority is not abiding by that particular order, okay, given by the House. In that case, by disobeying the legitimate order of the House, you are actually lowering down the sanctity as well as dignity of the House. This is considered to be as contempt of the House. Okay, that is the difference between contempt of the House and breach of privileges. So, he is the one who protect the privileges of the members of the House. Then he is the deciding authority when it comes to disqualification proceedings under the 10th schedule. And He is the one who has been given this important responsibility that you have to facilitate consensus building, especially among the different parties over the contentious issues, okay, through all party meetings, informal consultations, and he play a very important role when it comes to ensuring quality debates in the Rajya Sabha by allocating adequate time to MPs belonging to different political parties, okay. That is the role of Vice President as the chairman of Rajya Sabha. Why we have discussed this? Because as you can see, way back in 2022, UPSC has asked a direct question on this particular thing. And on similar lines, on this particular post, I have created a practice question for you people. So do practice this question and let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the simplified section. Now, an article has appeared in The Hindu which talks about that what different Indian cities can learn from the Kerala model, how it is dealing with rapid urbanization. This particular topic you can associate wherever you are getting a question on the problems related to urbanization, okay. You can quote this case study, okay, as a good practice. So why are we saying that this particular case study, whatever steps the Kerala government has taken, is a step in the right direction? So first of all, let's just understand that when it comes to Kerala, it has a unique rural-urban landscape. So it has presence of urban areas also and rural areas also. But what we have witnessed in the state of Kerala is urbanization is happening at a very rapid pace as compared to what we are seeing at the national level. So keeping in mind the accelerating urbanization level, and at the same time, the cities are vulnerable to climate-related, events like flash floods, landslides, coastal erosion, unpredictable weather. So keeping this thing in mind, Kerala wanted to come up with a context-specific approach, okay, that how to tackle this climate challenge which is being thrown in front of us and how to deal with rapid urbanization at the same place, okay. So in order to tackle this problem, Kerala government came up with the Kerala Urban Policy Commission. So this commission was put in place in December 2023 and it was given this particular mandate that you have to come up with a 25-year urban roadmap so that we can effectively deal with rapid urbanization and we can make the urban areas climate aware ecosystems, okay, so that we can enhance the resilience of our urban areas. So this particular commission submitted its report to the state in March 2025 and in its report it has done a structural reset. It has suggested changes with respect to how to use the data for governance. Changes has been suggested when it comes to governance structure also, and it has also talked about how we can enhance the financial strength when it comes to urban local bodies, okay. Now let's just understand that why it was needed. As we have discussed that Kerala is urbanizing way ahead the rate at which the urbanization is being seen in other states, and it is estimated that by 2050 80% of Kerala population would be living in the urban areas only, okay. And we know this thing that urban areas are being subjected to extreme climatic events. So in this particular backdrop, Kerala wanted to come up with a context specific approach, okay, approach that is suitable to its own peculiar context. And this commission which the Kerala government has put in place, it is the India's first state level urban commission which has made a structural reset or a paradigm shift. Why? Because based on this roadmap which this commission has given, it would make sure that the Kerala government response is not reactive. Reactive as in a disaster has happened in an urban area and then you are responding. It actually makes a reset and it put in place systematic thinking so that long-term resilience of urban areas could be improved over a period of time. Now let's look into that how this commission came up with its recommendation. So before it came up with its recommendation, it conducted various deep dive studies with respect to changes in land use pattern, changes in water systems, financial health of the urban local bodies, etc. And it also carried out stakeholder dialogues, okay. It had the consultation with mayors, NGOs, union, residents association, gig workers, panchayat members, etc. So it adopted a participatory participatory approach. And based on the studies that it carried out and the stakeholder participation, it came up with this report. Now let's just look into important recommendation given by this particular commission. So first and foremost, it talked about climate and risk aware zoning. For this, it recommended that we need to do hazard zonation mapping for different hazard. So just use the artificial intelligence tool, put the historical data, and that would give you that which zone is more vulnerable to a particular disaster, and that is what is hazard zonation mapping. Now based on the vulnerability of a particular urban area to a particular disaster, based on that you can put in place the infrastructure assets. Okay. Then how to use the data? So for this, it recommended creation of Kerala Institute of Local Administration, which would be providing real-time data to the urban local bodies, and so that the urban local bodies can come up with evidence-based policy mechanisms. Okay. Then it talked about climate insurance or green fees. So it recommended that whatever infrastructure projects you are developing or putting in place in eco-sensitive zones, on such projects an additional green fees should be levied, and this fees would be used to enhance the resilience, climate resilience of the urban areas. Okay, this in one way would be enhancing the financial strength of the urban local bodies, and this amount the urban local bodies are supposed to use to realize the idea of climate aware urban areas. Then moving further, it talked about that how the financial capacity of urban local bodies could be improved. So it talked about using the municipal bonds and pool bonds. So larger cities like Kozhikode, Tiruvananthapuram, they can make use of municipal bonds, and the smaller towns can go with the pooled instruments. Okay. Then it talked about the governance overhaul. So it talked about putting in place city cabinets which would be led by mayors, and it also talked about putting in place specialist cell which would be basically having the experts in climate, waste management, mobility law, etc. Okay, and a Janishri program would be recruiting and deploying the youth, okay, which would be having expertise in various domains. This would make sure that the urban areas are ready to deal with different kind of multidimensional challenges. Then it talked about place-based economic revival. So basically it is saying that you should not go with one size fits all approach. If urban areas are affected by a particular climate event, we cannot go with one approach. You need to look into that particular place is known for what. For example, Thrissur Kochi is known as fintech hub. So whatever revival plan you are coming up with for that particular city, that should be keeping in mind that this city is known as a fintech hub. Okay, so the solution would be more oriented towards how we can revive the fintech sector. Okay, that is what place-based economic revival actually implies. Then it talked about preserving the common areas like your wetlands, reactivating the waterways, preserving the heritage zones, okay, so that we can enhance the absorption capacity, okay, when it comes to the urban areas. And it also talked about putting in place city health council, which would be catering to migrants, students and gig workers. Now, why are we discussing the recommendation given by this particular commission, and why is it so unique? First and foremost, we have discussed that it adopted a participatory approach. It carried out dialogue with different stakeholders, and based on that it has given the recommendation. Okay, it is not a top-down approach, just experts sitting in a room and deciding what needs to be done. That has not been done in this case. Then in every recommendation this commission has given, it has taken into account that how we can enhance the climate resilience of our cities. Take for example, coming up with hazard zonation mapping. Take for example, levying green fees when it comes to infrastructure projects being developed in eco-sensitive zone, and how we can redirect that green fees amount that has been collected for enhancing the climate resilience of our urban areas. Then it also talked about enhancing the financial capacity of our urban local bodies, okay, by using the municipal bonds as well as the green fees that we talked about. Then it completely redefined the governance structure, okay. So it talked about incorporating the experts in different domain when it comes to urban policy planning. And then it also talked about that how data, real-time data should be used to decide that what should be your policy action. So it basically talked about evidence-based policy making. And then it dismantled this working in silo mechanism. Okay, planning is decided by some other expert, finance is looked into by another body. No, everything should be integrated. Okay, only then we will be able to understand that how planning is going to affect the financial strength when it comes to urban local bodies, and how the financial capacity of the urban local bodies is going to determine the climate resilient of our urban areas. So this best unique case study you can quote whenever you are talking about any question which is dealing with urbanization and its associated issues. You can also quote this case study wherever you are dealing with a question related to urban floods. Okay, that's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, recently the Culture Ministry is going to conduct a meeting wherein we would try to decipher the Harappan script. Okay, this particular aspect you can relate with the art and culture section of a prelim syllabus. So this gathering would be happening from 11th of September to 13th of September, and this is to be organized by Indira Gandhi National Centre for Arts, which is basically an autonomous institution under Ministry of Culture. Now, when it comes to the Harappan civilization, it was discovered way back in 1920s. And when you talk about the Harappan script, we have varied conclusion. Some scholars claim that the language of the script is Sanskrit. Some say that it is Dravidian language, and some basically link it with specific tribal languages, that is Santhali and Gondi. Now, let's make note of certain prelim pointers with regard to this Indus Valley script. So first and foremost, where all we can see this particular script? So you can see it on various materials like the seals, poetry, bronze tools, stoneware bangles, etc. Now, what are the unique features of this particular script? So first and foremost, they use a Bostrophidan method. What is Bostrophidan method? First line is written from right to left, then the alternate line would be written from left to right. Then it is mainly pictographic. It contains 250 to 400 pictographs, and each picture is depicting some sort of sound, idea or object. Then inscription length, it is typically very short. On an average, it has 5 characters, and the longest inscription that we have, it has 26 characters. Then it is logosymbolic, wherein a single sign could be representing a whole word, or a single sign could represent a part of a particular word. Okay, wherein sign represents object, words and homophones. What are homophones? Which are pronounced similarly, but they have different spellings and they have different meanings. Two words which are pronounced similarly, but they are spelled differently and they have different meaning. This is the beauty of English language. Okay, let's take the example of 8 and 8. Pronounced similarly, but they have different spelling and different meaning. That is what is homophones. Now, what all challenges the historians are, witnessing when it comes to deciphering the Indus Valley script? First of all, lack of bilingual inscription, like what we had in case of Egyptian inscription, Rosetta Stone we had. So that make it easier for the historians to do the comparison and decode the language. But such bilingual inscription is not available when it comes to the Indus Valley script. Then the inscription is quite short. Okay, so it makes it difficult to identify the recurring patterns. Then unknown language. Scholars speculate that it relates to Dravidian language, some associate it with the tribal language, etc. And it has unclear links to the later Indian writing system like Brahmi, Devanagari, etc. Okay. Then why we are trying to decipher this particular script? What would be the benefit? First and foremost, we would be able to draw the connection to the modern Dravidian and South Asian languages and tradition if it is linked to Dravidian language. Then the major benefit would be the academic impact. We would be able to bridge the gaps when it comes to our knowledge, when it comes to this Harappan civilization, that what actually led to decline of this great civilization that we had previously. And it has historical importance because it would enable us to figure out that how this civilization interacted with other, civilization at that particular time. Okay, so the cultural links with other countries could be exploited, could be understood in a better manner. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, recently, Ethiopia has inaugurated Africa's biggest hydropower project. This particular topic you can associate with prelim section. So, this largest hydroelectric project is basically Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. But different countries have protested against this particular dam and they have taken the issue to United Nations. Let's just understand certain prelim pointers with regard to this particular dam. So, it is formally known as Millennium Dam and it is situated at Benik Shagul Gumuz region of Ethiopia. Here you can see, okay, which is near the border of Sudan. You can see Sudan here. And it is located on Blue Nile. Blue Nile is this thing, which is one of the major tributary of Nile River. So, the construction of this particular dam started way back in 2011. And why it is considered to be one of the largest hydroelectric power project when it comes to Africa, because it can hold 74 billion cubic meter of water and can generate more than 5,000 megawatts of electricity, and that is the reason it is considered to be as the largest hydroelectric power plant in Africa. However, the other countries, that is Egypt and Sudan, they have raised concern against this dam, which is worth over more than $4 billion. Why? Because it would be reducing their share of Nile River, okay, because of this particular dam, because it has huge capacity to store a lot amount of water, okay, 74 billion cubic meter of water. Now, since Nile River is coming in context, let's just note down certain prelim pointers with regard to this particular river. So, it is the longest river in the world and it rises south of the equator and it drains into Mediterranean Sea. When you talk about the river basin, it includes Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Uganda, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Sudan and parts of Egypt also. It has two main branches. One is the Blue Nile, which is coming from Ethiopian and Eritrea highland, okay, as you can see here, it originates from Lake Tana. Blue Nile originates from Lake Tana, which is there in Ethiopia. And when you talk about the White Nile, it comes from Great Lakes region here, okay, this is the White Nile, okay, and the two meet at Khartoum, which is in the Sudan, here as you can see, okay. So, these are the pointers that we need to know with regard to this particular context. Let's move on to the next one. Now, recently, Assam is celebrating 100th birth anniversary of Bhupen Hazarika. This particular topic you can associate with art and culture section. So, Bhupen Hazarika, who was born in 1926, so currently it is its 100th birth anniversary, and that is the reason Assam has begun year-long birth centenary celebration for Bhupen Hazarika, in the memory of Bhupen Hazarika. He actually passed away in 2011 near Brahmaputra river. Now, let's just make note of his early life and musical learning. So, he was born way back in 1926 in Sadia, which is a village situated near the Brahmaputra river, and he basically gave the credit for his musical learning to his mother lullabies and the tribal music of Assam. And you can see the reflection of his mother lullabies and tribal music in his film Dimple Kapadia starter Rudali. Then he learned music from Vishnu Prasad Rabha, and when you talk about his college life, he did political science from Banaras Hindu University, where he was fascinated by Shehnai of Ustad Bismillah Khan. Okay. Then in 1948, after briefly working with All India Radio, he got a scholarship and then he pursued PhD in mass communication from Columbia University in New York. He was also inspired by African American musician, that is Paul Robeson, and his song Old Man River, which highlighted the struggles of African Americans through the way of song, and this was also adopted by Bhupen Hazarika, and this is reflected in the song Assamese as Bistrino Perero and Bengali version Bistrino Dupare. Now, when you talk about his expansive career, he directed various Assamese films including Shakuntala, Paritdwani, and he composed songs for films like Ek Pal, Rudali, Daman, etc. And his voice given for the song that is Samay Dheere Chalo, Dil Hoom Kare, they are still popular even today. He wrote and composed over 1,500 songs and made 14 films. And he also acted as an editor for various magazines like Amar, Pratinidhi and Prithwani. He was bestowed with a lot of awards like Dada Saheb Phalke Award for his lifetime contribution towards Indian cinema, and he was also awarded with Padma Bhushan as well as Bharat Ratna posthumously in 2019. Then he headed several organizations also like Sangeet Natak Academy and Assam Sahitya Sabha. He had a very short political career also. He fought independently without the, getting the party ticket from any political party. He fought independently and won the state election, and he worked as MLA from 1967 to 72. That's all that we need to know about this particular personality, that is Bhupen Hazarika. Let's move on to the next topic. Now, last topic of today's analyst. Recently, the Supreme Court has ordered Election Commission of India that apart from the 11 documents that you are considering when it comes to revision of electoral rolls in the state of Bihar, you need to consider Aadhaar as the 12th document. This particular topic you can associate with GS Paper 2, Government Policies and Interventions. So, that is what the Supreme Court has suggested. And when you go by the Indian Constitution also, when it comes to right to vote, we make sure that no citizen, either rich or poor, living in big cities or small villages, is denied right to vote. And the Election Commission of India should carry out the periodic revision of the electoral rolls with the perspective that every citizen should be provided with right to vote. It should not be with this sole perspective that we have to exclude the non-citizens. And this is something that we witnessed in the special intensive revision of electoral rolls that is happening in the state of Bihar. Lastly, previously also in 2007, the Election Commission of India did revise the electoral rolls before the UP assembly elections. Therein, they adopted door-to-door verification method, and this revision of electoral rolls, that time period was longer, as compared to what we are witnessing when it comes to revision of electoral rolls in the state of Bihar. And that is one of the major concerns which was raised by different political parties also, that a special intensive revision that the ECI started in the state of Bihar was started with a very short time gap, when the revision started and the time when the elections would be conducted for the state of Bihar. So the time was very less, and when previously it did the revision of electoral rolls when it comes to state of UP, therein it had made sure that the onus of proving voters' eligibility was not on the elector. I don't have to prove that I am eligible for voting. It was on the Election Commission of India. Now let's make note of certain pointers with regard to Aadhaar, because time and again it is in news because of this special intensive revision which has been initiated in the state of Bihar. So Aadhaar, we all know, it is a 12-digit unique identification number which is issued by the Unique Identification Authority of India to every individual resident of India. That means Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship, and that is something which the Supreme Court has also made clear, that Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. So it serves as an identity proof if you want to get various welfare scheme benefits, and it would be having your biometric and demographic information. Demographic information basically means my father's name, what is my gender, what is my date of birth. Biometric because you do iris scan, you give your biometrics, fingerprints, and this UIDAI is the authority which has been given this power that you have to issue the Aadhaar to every resident of India. It functions under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Now, one thing is very interesting, that how this body makes sure that our Aadhaar details remain safe. For that, it has come up with various initiatives, like it has come up with virtual Aadhaar. So, if you are doing, let's suppose, KYC verification by using Aadhaar, if you are going for virtual Aadhaar, a 16-digit random number would be given to you, and by using this random 16-digit number, you will be doing the verification. So by using this virtual Aadhaar, which would be linked with your Aadhaar number, but the authority would not be able to derive your Aadhaar number. Then we have masked Aadhaar. So as you can look into this picture also, this is a regular Aadhaar and this is a masked Aadhaar. So when you download e-Aadhaar, the first 8 digits of the Aadhaar number would be replaced with character X. Okay, and only the last 4 digits of the Aadhaar number would be visible. Okay, again it would be difficult for anybody to know your exact Aadhaar number. Then we have tokenization of Aadhaar. Therein again, if I want to do my KYC verification using the Aadhaar, so if I go for tokenization of Aadhaar number, so this UIDAI would be issuing me a alphanumeric string, and I would be doing the verification using this string. Okay, so for every agency, this string would be different. So this tokenization of Aadhaar would make sure that it is unique for each Aadhaar number for a particular entity. So different entities, based on this alphanumeric string that I have entered doing the verification, by using that, they cannot actually know that this Aadhaar detail relates to which person. Okay. Now we have a PYQ on this particular topic, so do let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, we have come to end of today's Analyst. Quiz would be coming right up next, so don't forget to practice the quiz and check your knowledge. Till then, keep smiling, keep learning. Have a great day all of you.